We are back with probably one of the most fun centipede builds that I have played this season. Completely accidental. I did not mean to stumble across this. This is the run right here. If you can see this, I am speed running through a tier 100 dungeon. This is not using any of the crazy new tech that came out. This is just with basic gear, some single GAs, no triple masterworking, nothing. If you want to put together a fun, fast build, run through the hordes, run through some pits, this is the build for you. I'm going to finish up the run right now, and then I'll break down the build so you can see exactly how it works.
We stand as one, with steel in our hands, and the battle's begun. Through the fire and fury, through the darkened night, we'll battle the bosses, we'll bring forth the light. Across the countryside, I roam like a storm. With every step taken, my spirit is born. Mobs of hell's creatures, they rise from the ground, but I'm wielding my axe, and I won't back down. In Kryptonia Legion, we stand as one, with steel in our hands, and the battle's begun. Through the fire and fury, through the darkened night, we'll battle the bosses, we'll bring forth the light. In the dungeons deep, where shadows creep, with echoes of warriors' promises to keep. Facing Lilith, I feel the thrill. With one mighty strike, I bend her will. In Kryptonia Legion, we stand as one, with steel in our hands, and the battle's begun. Through the fire and fury, through the darkened night, we'll battle the bosses, we'll bring forth the light. Kryptonia Legion, hear the
Super fast, super fun. The single target damage is on the rise. I'm still figuring out how to work that and get that to go up a little bit, but as we get better gear and as we get better Paragon points, that will change. So if you love the build and you have tried it out, just wait, get your masterworking in place. Let's go over the skills first so you can see exactly how this works. Starting at the top, we're going to unlock our second tier. We're going to go 1 point into Vigorous, so we can get 3 points into Balanced Exertion. This is going to give us 15% increased damage here. We're going to do 3 points in a follow through. Our Stinger is going to be a basic skill, a core skill. So we're going to take advantage of both follow through and Balanced Exertion. We're going to do 5 points into Stinger, 1 point into Enhanced Stinger. That's going to apply 50% of the base damage as poison. And then we're going to do 1 point into Rampant Stinger. Stinger does 40% increased multiplicative damage if it only hits a single enemy. Instead of echoing to surrounding poison enemies, Stinger now draws from each to hit enemies in the primary area again for an additional 10% of its base damage, up to 5 times. As you watch me run through those runs, you see all of the explosions going off. It's a lot of fun. We're going to do 1 point into Vortex, all the way down through Measured Vortex. This is going to pull everything in. When we have a barrier active, which we will at all times, it's going to knock enemies down, which is the most important part of that. We're going to do 1 point into Focal Point, and then 3 points into Apex. This is going to give us 9% increased damage to vulnerable enemies, and then double that versus elites. We're going to do 1 point into Mirage, and then 2 points into Unrestrained Power. This is going to give 8% increased damage while you're unstoppable, and we're going to be unstoppable all of the time. We're going to go 1 point into Ravager. Now, Ravager is what they call an Incarnate skill. Incarnate skills give you a passive, which is always active, even if it's not on your bar. Then it also gives you an active skill. So the passive will be 2 Ferocity Sacks at the minimum. When you activate it, unleash a Savage Roar, causing each of your attacks to trigger an additional damage strike per enemy for 6 seconds. We're going to go down all the way through Measured Ravager. While Ravager is active, your core skills instantly dash to targets, and all your vigor generation is increased by 30%. And when you watched the run, I was bouncing around all over the place, so Ravager is playing a huge role in that, so you can keep that up at all times. Coming down, we're going to go into Armored Hide, all the way down through Reinforced Armored Hide. What this is going to do, it's going to give us stacks of Resolve per 5 seconds, but we don't really need that because we're going to be at max stacks all the time. Because when you cast this, it's now going to give you maximum stacks of Resolve. It's also going to give you 20% increased damage reduction. So this will be up all the time. This is going to grant us Unstoppable, but because of our Spirit Hall choice, we're going to be unstoppable all the time anyway, so this really won't matter all too much. The most important part about this is that when we activate it, we get full stacks of Resolve, and then we get that extra damage reduction. We're going to go 1 point into Patient Guard, 1 point into Auspicious. This is going to give us a barrier moving in between packs or when we start the pit. So this way we don't run into something and immediately get one shot. We have a little bit of a cushion before that happens. We're going to go 1 point into Counterattack. This is going to give us a passive that's going to gain 10% dodge, and then we automatically retaliate if we dodge an attack. When we activate this, we're immediately going to start dodging all direct attacks, which means we will counterattack as soon as we dodge those direct attacks. Explosions around us can still hit us, and we won't counterattack to those, but anything that directly hits us will counterattack. We're also going to go all the way down through Reinforced Counterattack. Counterattack passively increases your critical strike damage for every close enemy up to 30%. What that means is that no matter what, even if this is not on your bar, if you're standing next to enemies, it's going to passively increase your critical strike damage, not by a little bit, by a lot. On some of the builds that I'm running, you're getting up to 17, 18,000 critical strike damage, and my gear isn't even that great. Moving down, we're going to go into Scourge, all the way down through Reinforced Scourge. What this does, Scourge will fear and slow enemies at the same time, so they don't run away from you too fast. This is going to come into play with our Vortex here that we've taken. When you fear your enemies, you can use Vortex to pull them all back in so they stay right next to you. The timing on that you'll get used to. Most of the time, I'm just spamming keys anyway, so if they get feared out of the way, that's fine, but you'll pull them back in eventually. This also does, each time you hit an enemy with Scourge, you gain 1% increased damage versus crowd control enemies up to 50%. That's a huge damage modifier. We're also going to get 60% of your maximum vigor over 6 seconds. We want to be making sure we get back to maximum vigor as much as we can because of the Kapaleka, so this is going to help us get there very, very quickly. Coming down, because we're going to be running an overpower build, this is going to go 3 points into Resilient. That's going to give us more max life. More max life will give us more damage and more survivability, and we'll cover that later on when we get to that. We're going to go 3 points into Dominant. This is going to give our Gorilla skills 15% increased damage to knock down enemies, and their first hits have a 5% chance to execute enemies. It's kind of fun to see. This works on anything except for bosses. We're going to go 3 points into Potent. This is going to be hitting an enemy with your Jaguar skills. Increases damage they take from you by up to 30%. 3 points into Furnace. Jaguar skills deal 1.5% increased critical strike damage per stack of Ferocity. So now we're stacking our critical strike damage with your counterattack. We're also stacking critical strike damage with Furnace. It's starting to add up. We're going to do 3 points into Ravenous. Your Centipede skills are going to deal 7.5% increased damage, but you're going to double that versus a healthy enemy. A healthy enemy is anything above 80%. We're going to go 3 points into Oppressive. Your Centipede skills deal 12% increased damage to crowd control enemies, and you're going to gain 30% increased crowd control duration. Moving down, for the ultimate, we're going to be taking the Hunter all the way down through Exalted Hunter. What this does, when we cast it, it's going to overfill Ferocity by 4 stacks, causing you to deal 100% increased damage to injured enemies. Injured is anything below 35%. It's a huge, huge bonus for anything that's that low. This also is a great source of movement. As we cast it, it bounds across wherever our mouse is or whatever direction where you're pointing your joystick in, and it goes to the next enemy. So we're going to move across the field pretty quick using this. We're going to go 3 points into Resolution. Casting an ultimate skill grants 15% increased damage to elites. You're going to double that if you're only fighting one enemy. You're going to double that if you're only fighting one. We're going to go 3 points into Spiritual Attunement. Your maximum vigor is increased by 30 while you have an ultimate skill equipped. We're going to go 3 points into Supremacy. Any enemies you kill while an ultimate skill is active, you're going to grant stacks of Supremacy, and that's going to go up to 30% increased damage. When an ultimate skill ends, you're going to gain 5 stacks of Supremacy. You're going to lose 1 every second, but we should be able to get the Hunter back up quick enough to refresh your stacks. We're going to take Prodigy's Tempo for our key passive. We're going to have a basic and a core skill. So every third consecutive cast of the same basic skill, all of the skills that we have purchased, the ranks are going to be increased by 2. And every third consecutive cast of the same core skill, we're going to reduce the skill's active cooldown by 10%. And that's going to be increased by 2% for each of their skill ranks. So as we spam Stinger, we're going to be getting 2 skill ranks, and then we're also going to be reducing our cooldowns very, very, very quickly. Let's take a look at the Paragon board. The way that Paragon boards are going to work this season, when you're looking at a planner, and my planner is going to be in the description of this video, so make sure you check it out and follow along. I'm going to have 2 different Paragon board setups, one with only 200 points and then one with a full board. The 200 points should be able to get you unlocked all 4 legendary nodes, and then all 5 glyphs will be unlocked with it. After you've unlocked everything, then you can go through and then you can start getting anything extra that you're going to need. So if you are short on armor, then you're going to go and you're going to take some armor skills. If you're short on resistances, then you can go take some resistance nodes. But it's going to be based on your character. So get 200 to get all of your glyphs unlocked, and then you can work on all of the extra stuff. So in the starter board, we're going to be running Colossal. This is where our resolve stacks come into play. The more resolve we have, we're going to get 2% increased damage for each stack. We're also going to deal an increased multiplicative damage to close enemies. When your glyphs hit level 46, you're going to be able to get a legendary bonus. They go from being a rare to a legendary. So when you hit 46, that is only going to be half of the power that the glyph will have. By the time you get your glyphs to 100, that multiplicative bonus on the bottom will have doubled. So leveling up your glyphs is a super important part. If you put this build together and you don't feel quite as strong, make sure that that's something that you're focusing on. In the next board, we're going to be running Vicious Shield. This one is currently not working as intended right now. You can basically just stack a bunch of life, and the more life you have, the more damage that you're going to be getting from your barrier. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Spirit. This is a huge source of critical strike damage. Now, you saw where we were multiplying 2 different sources already, and there's more to come for our critical strike damage. Spirit gives you critical strike damage. It also increases your damage each time that you hit a critical strike, and that's going to be up to 15% increased damage. And your legendary bonus is going to be damage to elites. For the next board, we're going to be running Sapping. When you cast 3 Gorilla, Jaguar, Eagle, or Centipede skills of the same spirit in a row, you're going to restore 15% of your vigor, and you're going to deal 30% increased damage. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Hubris. Now, I know this says Thorns. We're going to ignore that part because what we're using this for is that bonus to magic nodes. We want to be increasing all of the maximum resource nodes that we can so we can get the most out of the Kepaleka. That scaling is huge. We want to make sure that we're taking advantage of this. And for the legendary power, we're going to be getting vulnerable damage to enemies. In the next board, we're going to be running Convergence. You deal 20% of your 2 highest damage bonuses types, and that's going to be up to 30% total. Inside of that board, we're going to be running Fester. This is going to give you some additive damage to your Centipede skills. It's also going to give you a 50% increase multiplicative damage to crowd control enemies with your Centipede skills as well. The legendary bonus is increased poison damage. For the final board, we're going to be taking Revealing. This is where you're going to get your knockdown for your Gorilla skills for Dominant. You have a 30% chance to knock down vulnerable enemies, and you're going to deal 30% increased damage to crowd control enemies. Inside of this board, we're going to be running Canny. Now, I've done a ton of testing with this. For some reason, I keep on hearing that this is bugged, and I have not gotten a solid answer as to why. I have swapped this out with Bane live on stream over and over again. We went back and forth, and I saw slightly higher numbers with Canny than I did with Bane. So you guys can pick which one you want to use, but Bane or Canny are going to be good options for you. What Canny is going to do is going to give you up to 10% increased multiplicative damage for non-physical damage, which we're doing poison damage. And then it's going to give you a legendary bonus of non-physical damage also. That's Paragon board. Let's hop into the gear and we'll pull this whole thing together. Now, I just put this build together. I haven't even got to try the Mystic Circle tech on it. So right now we're going to run the basics here. I wanted to get the build out for everybody because it is a ton of fun. And then I'm going to adjust it a little bit. We're going to test the Mystic Circle. We're going to testing the new Shatter. We're going to be testing the Shroud of False Death. We have a lot to do with this build, so it's going to be super fun. So I wanted to get to the base version out the state that I have it in right now, because when I had it live on stream last night, everybody wanted to try it. So we're going to get the base one out, and then I'm going to do some more testing. I'll update the planner so that you guys can see exactly what's going to be happening with it. Starting with the helmet, we're going to be running the helmet of Ebawaka. This is going to give us up to 90% increased multiplicative damage because our stinger is going to be a centipede, jaguar, and a gorilla skill, and we'll go over how we get to that later on in the video. And we gain that because according to your secondary spirit hall choice, your skills are all additional jaguar, eagle, gorilla, or centipede skills. When we go over the spirit hall, I'll cover exactly how that works. For the chest piece, we're going to be running interdiction. They gain 10% increased block chance per stack of resolve. Now, right now, I have 19 stacks of resolve, so we have 100% increased block chance. That's going to play into our aspects later on. Now, 100% block chance sounds great, but block chance does not reduce all of the incoming damage. If you look right here, what block chance does, when you receive direct damage, you have a chance to block it. Block reduce 20% of the incoming damage. So you're going to get 21% reduced damage when you're blocking. So we're going to have that up all the time, but that's only for direct damage. If there is an explosion going off by you, you will not be able to block that. For the affixes here, we're going to be running dexterity, max life, armor. And then for the tempers, we're going to be running barrier generation, maximum resolve stacks. For the gloves, we're going to be running moonrise. Damaging an enemy with a basic skill grants 4% increased attack speed. That's going to stack 5 times. When you reach 5 stacks, you're going to enter a vampiric blood rage, and you're going to gain up to 100% increased basic damage skill. You're also going to get 15% movement speed. That's going to help us speed through these dungeons. For the affixes, we have a couple different options here. We can run max life, attack speed, critical strike damage, or core skills. I'm going to test out and see which one we get. The critical strike damage actually scales up really high, so I'm going to see what does more core skills or critical strike damage. But for now, we're going to run max life, attack speed, core skills, and then for your temper, we're going to be running critical strike damage and then your stinger size increase. For the pants, we're going to be running binding morass. The most important part of this, because we're going to be slowing enemies anyway, is that we're going to deal 20% increased damage to slowed enemies. For the affixes, we're going to be running dexterity, max life, basic skill damage. Now, if you can get a GA on max life, that is the preferred GA. So any pants that you find with a max life GA, take those first. For the tempers, now, as you can see, we're still running Touch of Death because I haven't gotten this build fully optimized yet. You have a couple options. Preferred option is definitely going to be running barrier generation. If you want to max out the size of your stinger, you can add stinger size to this too. But I'm going to be running resilient, and then I'm going to add barrier generation to this here. For the boots, we're going to be running duelist. Maximum ferocity increased by 5. More ferocity is more attack speed and then more damage as well. For the affixes, we're going to be running max life, armor, movement speed. And for the tempers, we're going to be running barrier generation, and then we're going to be running movement speed as well. For the weapon, we're going to be running the Rod of Kepaleka. What this is going to do is that your core skills are now additionally basic skills, and they're free to cast. They're going to deal 30% reduced damage based on their vigor cost. When cast at maximum vigor, your core skills consume all of the vigor, return to full damage, cast at their largest size, and become guaranteed critical strikes. And that's going to be increased by 3% increased critical strike damage, and that is per point of vigor spent. That's why we want to stack as much vigor as we possibly can. This aspect here is one of the most important parts of this weapon. If you're running a 1 but 4 GAs, you're going to do way less damage than if you're running a single GA with 3%. So make sure that that aspect comes first, then you get your maximum resources, and then you get your chance to cast your core skill twice. Those are the important ones. For the ring, we're going to be running the Ring of Midnight Sun. This is also another aspect that is incredibly important. If you're running a 4 GA Midnight Sun, you have a 20% increase on the aspect, it is not worth it whatsoever. Make sure that you have a high Midnight Sun, and then you can focus on the GAs. When you critically strike, you're going to get back up to 50% of the vigor that you have spent in the last 2 seconds. If you can spend a lot of vigor within 2 seconds, you're going to get back pretty much your full entire bar. When we get to the gameplay loop, you're going to get to see the vigor basically staying at full every single time that we cast. For the other ring, we're going to be running Redirecting Force. This is the final step in getting all of our critical strike damage to multiply, which is why we have so much of it. Right now, unbuffed, we're running 6,200, and that's because we're standing next to monsters. If I walk away from the monsters, you will immediately see it drop. And that's because we're running counterattack passive. That is multiplying your critical strike. This is multiplying your critical strike. And because we are running the interdiction on the armor, we have 100% block chance. So we're getting 100% of this aspect here that we're running. What it's doing is you're going to gain increased critical strike damage equal to 70% of your block chance. It's a multiplier. Blocking is going to double that bonus. So when we block, which taking direct damage, we're going to block all the time. We're going to double that bonus, get 140% increased critical strike damage bonus. It's pretty crazy. For the amulet, we're going to be running the Banished Lord's Talisman. The aspect is very important for this. You don't want to be running a 20%, but you're going to have to kind of figure out where you want to run. If you find something with great GAs and you're like 45, 50%, you can use that. Maximum life is going to be the most important aspect on this to get a GA on. I haven't gotten one yet, but if you find one, that's what you want to run. That maximum life is going to convert into a ton of damage from the barrier that you're going to be getting. So let's go over the gems, the runes, and then your spirit hall. In the jewelry, we're going to be running diamonds. This is going to increase our resistances, which are rather low. If you need to, I do keep this in my bags. If I'm feeling a little squishy for some reason, I can always pop this on, and then that'll bring my resistances back up to something closer to cap. But most of the time, I don't need it. When I did that run, this is what I ran on, so you guys got to see it. It is completely doable, but just make sure that you feel comfortable with what you want to do and decide on what runes you want to run. Inside of the armor, we're going to be running Grand Amethyst. Between the two pieces of armor, we're going to get 48% barrier generation. If you scroll down to the defensive right here, you're going to see your barrier bonus. When I add this to my pants and I get rid of the Touch of Death swarm duration, I will be at basically where I want to be at. 123 is the breakpoint for your barrier generation. So when I get myself all set up for this build, I'll be running that. Get your barrier generation up because that is very, very important to your survivability. If you don't have 100% barrier generation or anywhere close to that, you're going to feel very squishy. For the runes, we're going to be running Pak Q. This one gives you your barrier. When you spend 300% of your maximum resources, and you saw how quickly we spend resources when we did that run, and we'll cover it again when we do the gameplay loop, you're going to invoke the Druid's Earthen Bulwark, and that's going to grant you a barrier. You're going to get full barrier because of our barrier bonus here. For the other runes, we're going to be running Tom Zal. This is going to give us 20% increased maximum life when we cast a non-channel core skill, and that's only 8 times, and we attack very quickly. So your maximum life will be up all the time. For your Spirit Hall choices and how this is going to work, we're going to be taking Jaguar as our top. Every 5th time that you deal direct damage to an enemy with a Jaguar skill. Remember, Stinger is going to be a Centipede, Jaguar, and a Gorilla skill, so this is going to count for that. Unleash additional strikes dealing 15% of the damage that you have dealt to them in the last 0.5 seconds. All of your skills are now Jaguar skills. We're also going to be taking Gorilla as the second one. Maximum resolve is going to be increased by 2. When you have at least 5 stacks of resolve, which we have 19, you are unstoppable. We will be unstoppable all of the time. With the Helm of Ebawaka, that is where we get our 3rd skill from. This takes the second choice that we've made and it gives it to our main skill. That is why we are running a Centipede, a Jaguar, and a Gorilla skill. Now for the gameplay loop. Basically, and just like all of the other builds that this is running, all you're going to do is spam your buttons. For your elixirs, what you want to be running is you want to be running your Fortitude, so you gain your max life, and then for your incense, you want to be running the Redomain Buzz. It's going to give you more life here. And then when we pop your Song of the Mountains, we are over our armor cap. So we're going to be armor capped at least. We might not be resistance capped, but we're very, very close. So what you're going to be doing for this, when you set your training dummies up, set your training dummies to attack, and then you're going to set your training dummies to boss type. This will help you see what all of your active bonuses are going to look like. Now, when you start attacking, all you're going to do is you're going to hold down your Stinger button. You can do the same thing with the controller. You hold it down, and then you just spam all of your keys. Whenever those cooldowns come up, you just spam them. And this is it. You just run this. If you look at the Vigor bar, you see how fast it's being refreshed? That's because Kepaleka is constantly refreshing it. We have refreshed it so many times that we don't have to worry about it coming back. So this build hits hard. We just hit 1.6 trillion. It's still in the works, and I'm still learning on how to figure it out and how to scale up that damage a little bit, but we're getting there. So it is super fun when we get this more dialed in. That boss damage is going to go up. I absolutely am 100% fan of this. We're going to try out some new tech tonight. Let me know what you think of the build in the comments. I'm live on YouTube and Twitch every night. Stop by, say hi, theorycraft with me. Catch you on the clip side.